Yo, what's good with y'all? It's Keymajor back with another video for y'all today. I'm going to be showing you guys a lot of methods and techniques CUBEATZ uses that have helped me with my samples and to hopefully help you guys improve your samples as well. Let's get straight to it. So I have this project in here. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to explain the methods that you could help apply into your own samples. So I first started the sample with this melody up here. I started with the Roland SRX Orchestra and I pulled up this preset number 96. Just a very full heavy brass, and then I laid down this very simple melody right here. So things you can learn from this melody is two things. You have the very simple chord progression, and then you have the top melody, which is the catchy part that attracts the listener and is very repetitive. When it comes to the top melody, I like to keep it repetitive, so it's very predictable for the listener. But to not have the melody get boring, you could switch up the chords, and you can have the chords changing. So the chords is very simple. I started with my root note, which is F, and I copied this up an octave, and then I copied it another octave. When using organic live instruments like brass and these very full heavy sounds, you want to layer a lot. So using this brass or using any horns or flutes, whatever, I always take the same notes and just layer them a lot. Next, I just took the F again and I pitched it up 7, so 2, 4, 6, and 7. Very simple technique I always use to start a chord, and then I'll just make it a minor by just putting a note in the middle, and then you can bring your middle note down 1 and I'll make it a F minor diminished. I think I'm not too crazy with the music theory, but that's all we're doing. We're having very simple chords and then building them into a much larger scale and making a full melody just off of one simple chord. And all it is just layering, taking the same notes up an octave, down an octave, duplicating it. And that's what I did. I took this G and I pitched it up an octave. And then with this G up here, like I mentioned earlier, I knew I wanted to create some very simple melody. So I literally just have it bouncing back and forth, going up to C, back down to G, and then up to C sharp. Now this melody sounds very dark, and the way I capture that sound is just by using two notes together that use a lot of tension. So something as simple as just using C and then C sharp is what made the sample a lot darker. For the effects, all I added was a stock reverb, just making it a lot less dry and a lot more just blending everything together really. Now what I did with that is I exported it into this wave right here, and all I did is I reversed it and then I pitched it down 600 cents. And then for the effects on this wave, I just added this halftime where I took the band and I moved it up halfway, so the halftime is only affecting the upper frequencies, and then I brought it down 67%. And then down here on this EQ, I just cut out the lows and then chopped off some of the highs. And that's the second tip I could give when it comes to making your samples: taking your melody and then exporting it and messing around with the wave. Once you recorded it and you mess with the wave, you can mess with a lot of the textures of the actual sound, the quality. Next, I wanted to add some rhythm. The second thing I learned with CUBEATZ samples is they always have a lot of rhythm, whether that's through instruments or percussion. For this sample, I wanted to add it through a piano, the dark low bass piano that everybody knows, everyone's used. I just used it a little bit differently, and that was instead of just having one static note, I wanted to chop it up to give it more bounce. And then for the effects, I just raised the lows a little bit and lowered some of the mids and highs. In the second half, I did add a switch up, which is something I'll get into later in the video. But continuing with this first section, next I added an analog lab, and then I use this preset called Revenant. This is from me and Keon's new coding files volume 2. It comes with an analog lab bank with 50 presets and a lot of these multi-key presets. It comes with bonus samples. It's almost 200 drums, all unique, all fresh. And it also comes with a bunch of one-shots. You can tell all these multi-key one-shots, pads, synths, phrases, bass. The kit is 50% off right now, so make sure you guys go cop before the deal is gone. If you cop now, you also get the deluxe edition, which comes with 2 exclusive tutorials on how to improve your drums, your melodies, your mixing, your arranging, everything. So yeah, the kit is currently half off. It's 2 gigabytes, so make sure you guys don't miss this deal. It's the first thing in the description down below. But let's go back to the sample. So I loaded up this preset and I laid down this melody right here. The melody is very simple. If I go back to the first melody, I use the exact same notes. Obviously, it's at a different pitch though, because I changed the pitch for the whole sample. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I just started with a very simple chord. All I did to change into this melody is I took the C sharp and I pitched it up an octave. The next thing I did is I arpeggiated it. There's another method you can use in your melodies. Instead of having just very static chords, you could help arpeggiate it and create some sort of rhythm with it, which is really all I did here. I just chopped it up using the slice tool, simple pattern, and then copied it over, keeping it very repetitive, very simple. simple, just really focusing on sound selection. CUBEATZ samples are so advanced when it comes to the sound selection. Take your time on finding good sounds. Like I mentioned earlier, if you need new sounds, I promise you coding files will not disappoint. For the effects, I just made it sound a lot more full by layering this halftime, and then I added this pancake. I turned the mix down to 32%, giving it more movement, panning it left and right, and I just cut out a little bit of the highs because I wanted it to sound very dark and mellow, nothing harsh with a lot of highs in it. Then I added this piano V3 and I used this preset right here. Now, there's a lot of methods that CUBEATZ uses that I use in this melody that I'm gonna break down. The first important one is I'm using an organic instrument. I'm using a piano. I don't want to have it sounding like a robotic and making it sound not human. I want to sound like someone's actually playing it. So I did two crucial things. Number one, as you can tell, not all the notes, but a lot of these notes are kind of off the grid, but it definitely helps make it sound less robotic. And then I also did Alt R to randomize the velocity, which is another big thing. But getting into the actual notes themselves, like I said, I started with this very simple repetitive pattern right here. I'm using these same 4 basic notes, and that's my main chord. I'm just turning it into a bunch of different melodies. Then I added this top pattern. For an example here, none of this is really on the grid, and then especially with this pattern up here, as you can tell, a lot of it is off the grid, but this pattern is what really makes the second half come to life. For the effects, I wanted it to sound a lot more vintage and just warm. The first thing I added was some ambient reverb. This is a free reverb, and I just used this to kind of blend everything together. Most importantly, I added this RC20, and I use this gritty vintage preset from Kavi. You guys can just copy it. All it does is add some distortion, a little bit of detuning, but a lot of noise. EQ cleaning up the sound, and then another EQ cutting out a lot of the highs to make it sound more vintage. The last melody I added is this phrase from my boy Keon, his Essential Pedal phrase collection. All I did is drag and drop, and I matched the key. As far as the effects, I just took out the lows, and that was pretty much it for the first section. Now I felt like I still had a lot of room to add more melodies, but I did not want to add on to the first layer. This is another thing that CUBEATZ does a lot in their samples, which is my biggest tip, is adding switch ups and counter melodies and all that type of stuff, but not overcomplicating it with your first layer. I instead added this melody, and then I changed this all for the second half instead of, combining it all in here and making everything sound way too full. So the first thing I did is I copied the same piano and I just brought it down forward. Next, I took this melody, which was the first analog lab, and I put it into another analog lab, copied it over using basically the same notes. I just took this F sharp and I pitched it up an octave, and I created a different type of pattern still using the same notes. And this preset is from Coding Files Volume 2 again. It's called Des. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about coding files is a lot of you may not have analog lab. If you don't have analog lab, don't worry, they are converted into just one shot, so you can still use and manipulate in a lot of different cool ways. For the effects, I just added a delay, put it on ping pong, so it's panning, bouncing left and right, and I just turned the mix knob down so it wasn't so harsh. And then the last thing I added, which is the most important, that I feel like brings a lot of the emotion in, is the synth bass. This synth bass is from Coding Files Volume 2 again, and it's the Alchemist bass. And I feel like this bass adds a lot to the melody because it covers a lot of the lows. For the master, I added this pitching it up 4, EQ, cutting out some of the mids because there was a lot, raised the highs a little bit and then raised the lows to make it sound a little more full, and then the soft clip just making it a little louder. Render that out, and then you have the final sample. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this sample, pretty much it for this whole video. I really hope you guys did enjoy and learn something new. If you're in need of new sounds, 50% off right now, first link in the description. Make sure you guys go cop, and I appreciate all the support for everyone who's already purchased, all the great reviews. Yeah, make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit the bell so you can see some more videos, and that's pretty much it, and I'll see y'all in the next video.